Welcome, everyone. People are just starting to filter in. We'll be kicking off here in 30 seconds or so as everyone gains access. Great. We're going to get going. Today, we are going to be talking to you about Viva Engage. It is part of the Microsoft 365 stack. We get a lot of questions about the Microsoft 365 stack because it's super powerful, it's well adopted. But what Microsoft is doing is they're rolling different components into the 365 pack. They're merging existing components, they're renaming components. So there tends to be a lot of confusion about what M365 represents, which components do what, and just what the expected evolution is going to be for these. So Michael is going to give a little bit of context about that, but mainly he's going to drill into what Viva Engage was, what it is now, what we anticipate it being. Mike D'Onofrio is an experienced director, longtime improver with us. He brings a unique experience to this. He comes from the visual, the design, the experience side. With Microsoft M365, there are certain mandates for how that needs to look with their modern experience. Mike is an expert in blending usability with what exists and leveraging that in the 365 stack. He's also an expert in how to get people to engage with the tools that are there. And that is really what Microsoft means to do with Viva Engage. So without further ado, I am going to hand off to Mike to start. We will have questions right before the demo, and then we'll have questions immediately after. If we don't get to all the questions that people submit, we'll follow up with the group and you individually to make sure your questions get answered. We appreciate your participation. Don't be shy about asking questions. It's right in the QA tab at the top of your screen. And we will look forward to talking with you all soon.
Great. Thanks for the intro, Russ. And thanks everybody again for taking time out of your busy day to join us today. Want to go through a lot of things about Viva Engage. There's a lot of new things, as Russ mentioning. The Microsoft stack is growing and ever changing. So one of our first goals here, talk about building relationships. We'll start things off there just to kind of get us into that mindset of what is Viva Engage actually trying to bring to the table before we introduce it. Go through what it is and what it isn't. There's a little history there. We'll talk about Teams versus Viva Engage a little bit, get that question a lot. So we want to make sure that we understand the different purposes, some of the crossovers, but really call some important things out. I'll be showcasing that along the way as well. We'll get into the nuts and bolts for sure, but building communities is a huge part of Viva Engage. So definitely want to spotlight that and give you some tips on how to do that, how to approach that, and really think about the importance of community building. Then we want to get into some specific use cases because I think that is just a huge, like, how does it work in the real world? What are the actual applications? What are the benefits? How could we use that? And that's what I'm hoping is that for those joining today, really start to spark some ideas on how you can jump into Viva Engage for the first time, amplify what you already have going on, and really learn about those direct applications. And then we'll go in and really look at it, test drive it a little bit, and we'll make sure that we have plenty of time for Q&A. So as I said, let's first start with thinking about relationships, and we'll jump into a Wayback Machine here, and this concept of the water cooler. And I always thought this one was funny, and it actually a coworker of mine had mentioned this not too long ago when we were speaking to a client and talking about kind of the social engagement and the inner office kind of workings. And he was like, yeah, like the water cooler. This is like the kind of the water cooler social aspect of it. And of course, every Gen Z in there really has no idea what you're talking about. I'm guessing some millennials don't know what you're talking about, and for good reason, right? Because this is a very dated concept, as dated as pretty much every color in this photo, right? And the concept, though, behind it of people engaging pre-social media way back in the day. I have enough gray hairs to remember what it was like pre-social media, at least for a small part of my life, and to have people kind of come together at different times within the office, working together every day. Everything from the mindless chit chat about the game and the weather, but also things kind of organically would always pop up, right? Finding out what others are working on, connecting with people in different departments, how their day is going, what their boss is doing, but inevitably something comes up about a client, about a project, about something that might be relatable, and conversations can start up. And this is where people might learn something that they normally wouldn't know. Hey, I didn't know you were working with that client now. I used to work with them. I've got some insights I could share with you. Oh, yeah, I actually know one of my best friends worked for that company not too long ago, blah, 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 right? All these great ways of finding out information organically because the conversation's there. Well, that doesn't really flow the same way today. Our workplaces are looking more and more like this every day. We're spread out, we're spread thin in some cases, but we're finding new ways to communicate, and this technology is enabling a lot of great stuff for sure. Working from home, hybrid, of course, but I'm guessing almost everybody on this call going through the pandemic has seen their work life kind of change in that way. And so how are we building now relationships with those coworkers when we've got coworkers that are either 100% remote, work in another office across the country, and maybe people that we hardly ever see. Maybe we see them once a year, maybe we never see them. I know I've worked on some projects over the pandemic that spanned a year or two where we actually didn't meet in person the entire project and maybe until the end just to celebrate the launch or something like that. And it worked, but we had to overcome some of these technology things along the way for sure. But when it comes to your inner workings, how are you sharing knowledge and expertise? How are you getting the right people together? This is with the outside as well when it comes to vendors, consultants, and your clients. How do we promote the company culture and keep it going when everybody's in these different areas, cross department? And really, the big answer is how do we reduce that email and not add more meetings, more email, and more things to people's calendars that we demand of them versus things they can just organically do on their own. Microsoft is working very hard all the time to solve these problems in a lot of different ways. So we'll go through those today for sure. Before I dive in really deep, I just thought I'd take a look at this kind of framework concept of communication and collaboration. I don't know if you've seen like the loops concept that Microsoft used to use. They've been using it some years ago, and it's still out there today. This is kind of a different flavor of that to really just show it kind of building upon a core. And this is like that ideal Microsoft stack with obviously some non-Microsoft things to come into play the further you go out of the loop. But if you think about it as like your modern intranet is usually the core. This is that single source of truth. People know that where they can get all their updates, they can get their employee benefits, they can get all the information that they need, say it's about clients or whatever it is. They've got that one place to go. Teams is that next layer. So within that loop, it's a little bit more closed because it's about productivity, collaboration. We're working with smaller teams. All of those teams have membership requirements to them, and we're all working together on different projects and doing things. This could be internal and external facing teams. But now Viva Engage starts to open up some of that loop, right? This next layer is allowing more collaboration and communication across groups. This could be open forums where anybody can see what's happening in there. Anybody can join the conversation, or it can be targeted, still private, but now you've got people from across the organization engaging in new ways. And then that outer loop, these are just examples of what might be there. Mobile, kiosks, TVs in the break room. There's all kinds of different ways. That's not to say Teams, SharePoint, Viva Engage, they all work on your mobile phone as well. But these might be some different type of app or some different type of collaboration or communication that's needed on the outside. The further you go out, a little more fringe gets there, but you can still get those important messages out there. Doesn't show email on here. We all kind of feel like that's a given. Emails in and around this thing constantly, but how do we reduce it? How do we get people not to lose things in their inbox and have to do all that extra work to sort through things? How do we put them front and center in these different environments so they can get to them fast? That's one of the big goals, of course. Some nice stats from Microsoft for sure. This is something we could easily share. They did a Forrester report and compiled some meaningful stats on the cost saving and benefits. We get this question all the time, of course, too. What is the ROI? Why should we be using tools like this? And these are some of the things that they found. This 75% reduction in effort, spending discovering content and experts. I think that's a huge key here of like linking up the subject matter experts, the SMEs, across the country, across the world, whatever it is, and keeping them engaged with each other and talking and innovating and finding new ways to do things and letting people find that information, making it accessible. That democratization of content is so important. 20% reduction in employee attrition, 50% reduction in time to full productivity, and then 20% weekly operations time recouped for helping source relevant content for employees. Of course, the legwork that gets reduced here, more self-service, more employees helping each other. We're going to show a lot of examples of that as we go through this and talk about those use cases. So let's get into Viva Engage, but still one little step before we do. Who remembers Yammer? There's a history here, and I think people might still be saying Yammer. Like, you know, that's probably one of the biggest confusing things. What the heck is Viva Engage? I thought it was Yammer. So the history goes that back in 2012, Microsoft buys Yammer for $1.2 billion, which I think by inflation today is, I don't know, is that 2.2 billion now? I have no idea, but it was a major investment. And they actually went through and rebranded it a couple times and repositioned it, but Yammer never quite got off the ground. And there's, I think, numerous reasons for that. But I'm curious here, and maybe this is where we could test out the chat, see if people are you know, out there. How many of you have used Yammer? And you could just put in yes or no into the Yammer or into the chat if you've ever used it before. And so just curious, and Russ, you can kind of, once we get a few of them in there, maybe call them out. And it's okay if we don't get any. Just want to see if anybody has ever used it before, because like I said, it just didn't really get off the ground. And right away, there was already some criticism about, hey, did Microsoft make a big mistake doing this? Is this where they should have gone? This concept of the enterprise social network, it became a really big buzzword back then. And it, like I said, it morphed and changed over the years. But did it really take off the ground? And one of the big reasons was Teams, how much Microsoft invested in Teams. And this little snapshot here shows, hey, in 2019, there was about 20 million users worldwide. That number jumped to 115 million in just 1 year. And you can see now over the last 4 years, we're over 320 million users worldwide. Teams was a huge focal point on getting things, collaboration, and getting stuff off the ground. Yammer was never really connected to Teams. Yammer really didn't do a great job connected to SharePoint. And that was one of the big flaws that really caused that adoption to be poor. We get any chime-ins there, Russ? Just curious.
Yes, we did. So the overwhelming response was either didn't use it or had a negative experience with it. And the key thing was some confusion between when to use Yammer or Teams or some of the former SharePoint social components.
Yes, yes. And that we get that all the time in terms of questions about like, it's another thing, or is this something we really should be using? That is not surprising. You know, Yammer didn't have the best user experience around it. It was a little clunky. It was a little cumbersome. And like I said, it was really that integration is where it failed. And what we typically saw with clients is like, hey, they turned it on because it was there. They have an all company community. Maybe they set up a couple other breakouts like, hey, we need like a leadership thing. And maybe this division has their own. People posted in it for a while, especially during the pandemic. Some were posting news and articles on the all company. And then it just started to collect dust. And if you go into an organization, I've done this multiple times, go in, see that it's on, and see that the last post was from 2022, 2021, things like that. Super common. And Microsoft realized that, and they realized like, hey, this isn't working, and we need to do something to really boost this and change not only the experience, but change the offering. We need to add more features, and we need to integrate. That was huge. So here now we are in this kind of ever-growing landscape of what Viva encompasses. So when we say the word Viva, it is really a whole suite of apps, and you can see how much is here, and some have been added recently. And I'll be honest, there's a few on here I'm not as familiar with at all. But if people enjoy this deep dive into Viva Engage, hopefully we can do some more deep dives into these other areas because I want to learn about it. I want to bring that information forward as much as possible because you can see here, they're starting to group things together. We're talking about Viva Engage that lives here under this employee communication and communities. And Amplify is a new tool that's part of that. This is about, I think, for all of our Marcom people on the idea of getting more analytics. And when you have campaigns released to the outside world, you're so used to all the great information you get back, but you don't have that internally. Microsoft is trying to find an answer for that and include that in the stack. So now you can run campaigns, get reports, realize what engagement you're getting through employees. And obviously this connects well through a vehicle like Viva Engage, building communities and connecting coworkers in new ways. Viva Connections is that next leap of saying, hey, this should be everywhere. If I'm working in Teams every day, I should have my other apps one click away. If I'm working in SharePoint every day, I should have my other apps one click away, and we'll show examples of that. But really quick, we've got a new analytics and feedback. I think some might be familiar with Viva Insights. You might have been getting those emails and just seeing like your personal insights of like, hey, you've had this amount of quiet time during the day, or you've been involved in these meetings. Here's the people you work with the most. In the background, Microsoft is collecting a lot of data and they're bringing it forward in insights so that they'll show you those personal dives, but there's a lot more you could do with that. You could see what whole teams are doing, what they're working on, where they're spending their time, and starting to understand where there can be efficiencies, how you can get more data around what the entire company is doing, and that is going to flow into these new tools like Pulse and Glint to get a lot more feedback. And I'll be honest, Glint is totally new to me. Haven't explored it yet, but would love to see more about it. Then you've got a lot more around Viva Learning, Viva Goals, and there's a lot more, I think, being added as well. You're going to see new analytics coming out for Viva Engage. There's more things that are going to be rolled out this year. They're going to provide a lot more power. So it's a lot. Totally get it. We're going to focus on Viva Engage today so you can really see the power of what that brings. And then, like I said, future opportunities. Let's do some more of these to talk about these specifics. And of course, we're happy to do one-on-ones with anybody that wants to learn more about what this can do for your organization. Let's apply it to what you're doing. And we'll talk about those use cases too. So this is a quick overview on like what Viva Engage was really intended for. I actually checked this link that I had in there. This link no longer connects to this content. I think Microsoft still uses some of these words, but they've been rebranding and changing and releasing new things. I'm kind of glad I captured it though, because I like that it gives you that one quick snapshot on really what the purpose of Viva Engage is. Connect people, build communities, spark engagement, exchange knowledge, and activate people. I like that one too. I like some of these that are things we might not think of when we think of like, hey, especially with Yammer. Oh, all company. Yeah, there's some stuff on there. No, that's not what this is, right? So connecting people across the company, we already kind of hit on that one. I like that there's a nice stat here. 43% of leaders believe that relationship building is the biggest challenge in the remote network world. I can see that happening a lot at a lot of companies. Even at my own company, we're always looking at new ways to engage and bring each other together. Viva Engage is a great way to do that. The communities, we have really kind of already started to hit on that, bringing people together based on interests and roles and experiences. And now gaining that kind of sense of belonging, empowering that organization to reach and engage people at scale. Or if you've got an organizations of hundreds versus an organization of 10,000 plus, how do you start to bring so many amounts of people together that are spread out across the world? This brings that to the table on day one. Spark engagement. We'll look at use cases directly about leadership, communing with employees, and amplifying the vision, shape the culture, putting those things into practice. Really powerful for that. Exchanging knowledge. This is something I love to do personally with Viva Engage, is just staying up on things that are happening and having a place to communicate with others and talk about ideas and throw things out there and share links and share things that we're seeing out there in the world, and keeping ourselves up to date on what's happening. And then this last one, activate people. When they're connected, they feel like they contribute. All these employees that are just sort of on their remote island, not really caring about what the company's doing, maybe not even feeling part of the company. There's so many different ways we can empower them and just talk about the social impact of things that you're doing, the company culture, and just the communication can strengthen in a lot of ways. So again, we'll get into those use cases. So here's a quick just look at what it is. And right away, when you just see these screenshots, you'll see, hey, they're trying to make this much more social media-like. A huge difference from Teams right there, right? This idea that, hey, this is a community. There are people posting. There is a flow to it. And it flows a lot differently than, say, your chat in Teams, where your chat in Teams is more, hey, these are the things sort of happening one by one. You're always going to see the latest. There is really no way to gauge engagement or likes or getting something relevant to you. And we'll talk about what that means when we get into the bigger picture here. So let's hit that idea of why is Teams so different, yet some things might be a little bit similar versus Viva Engage, and really see where Microsoft is saying, hey, Yammer's gone, Viva Engage is the new world. So Teams, number one, this is all about collaboration, and it's all about a select group, not an open forum that the whole company's in doing things, or even major, hundreds, thousands of people are in necessarily. They're usually a little bit more of a closed loop. This is about your project. This is about co-authoring and collaborating on documents. This is about tasks and deadlines, sharing reports, financials, whatever it might be, in more of a closed loop. Having those tools integrated in there like Planner and OneNote and calendars and OneDrive and all these different types of things that help you manage files and manage your day-to-day. Teams has a lot of layers to it, has a lot of use. A big difference is like going to the mobile app. You're able to just jump into all these individual things, where Viva Engage is going to be much more focused. And then, of course, for your meetings and video calls and your chat, it all works. So as a quick chat vehicle, it's great. It definitely works. Where is Viva Engage different? Well, it's not about just pure chat. It's about subject matter. It's about communities, like we said, building professional networks, bringing those people together. You could still have private areas, but let's say you want to bring marketing and sales together. You can now bring these groups across your organization together to share and talk about very specific things that would be different than some of the actual work that's taking place in Teams, and we'll talk about that. We'll show you some examples of that too. It's a much richer experience. It's a better user experience. It's much more socially driven. It's much more about emojis and likes and voting and all of those social media things that people use on a day-to-day basis within all their other kind of different apps and things they use, to try to make the professional version of that, to just make it easy and simple and actually fun and engaging to use. And you'll see some other examples about search. Searching across communities, using hashtags, using things like topics. Topics is a big world on its own. We'll touch on it a tiny bit. But it's really not meant for file collaboration. It's meant for getting things to somebody in real time. If you're at an event and you want to take some photos and take a video and things like that and share them, it's a great vehicle for that. But it's not meant for co-authoring and working on documents. So we'll get into that a little bit more too. Quick view of that mobile app. I think it's a great app. It does a lot. It definitely keeps you focused. You can see here what a feed looks like, your profile. Live events is something that's actually a feature as well. So like Teams does that as well. But there are different, ways you can engage with live events here. We'll touch on that a little bit. The questions and answers, I want to show that for sure in the demo. I think that's really cute, cool. Communities, if you know Teams and you've used the Teams app before, totally different experience. This is a much more focused and richer social media-like experience for sure. Here's a couple of examples of how it works. You'll see right here in the center at the top, we've got discussions, questions, praise, and poll. When you're going to post something, this is how you do it. Those are your choices. You can see here at the left, here's a little example of some of our company culture stuff, our come together. You can post images, post videos, respond, react, comments on comments. Discussion seems pretty obvious. I'll show you questions in action. And the best part about that, of what makes it different, is not only does it get like tagged as a question and you can see it look different, once people start to engage, you can actually vote on other people's answers, and it's actually going to bring them up and show the most relevant. Think of it as like the upvoting in Reddit and things like that. It's got features like that that Teams certainly doesn't have. Then you see another feature here like praise. I can give my shout outs. I can give my employee recognition in some different ways. It gets tagged as well. And the use of polls, again, another engagement way to get some of that quick answers. Seen polls done in different ways. See people using Microsoft Forms and SharePoint and trying to get kind of polls done in that way. I think what Viva Engage done to streamline it, make it super simple, is a really great way to use polls for sure. Finding things. We've seen a lot of clients complain kind of about just search in general and wrapping their head around how I search and do all these things in the Microsoft world. Topics is a big subject matter. We're going to touch on it a little bit today, and I'll show it in action. But basically, I can tag things under a topic. And when I do that, like in this example, like a product idea, I can actually click on that tag and see things sorted by that topic. And within my search world, I see that it's a choice of, hey, there's conversations and there's people, and then there's topics. And I can see all the information that is around this particular topic. But topics is very powerful. It actually can span across all communities. So it's all Viva Engage, and it actually goes beyond Viva Engage. It goes into SharePoint and other worlds too. So that's why it's a pretty powerful thing. It's being built up for sure by Microsoft. We'll touch on it a little today, but there's a lot more there. Could be its own half-hour webinar for sure. Hashtags, everyone's familiar with them. Some people love them, some people hate them. We've done different things with different clients where, hey, just let people use it, see organically how they're going to start using hashtags, see if I can get more meaningful content that way, because just like in social media, I can click on that hashtag and see everything that's been tagged that way. But because it's basically open, anybody could write one. You might have just one post that uses that particular hashtag or a particular spelling or a misspelling or things like that. Topics is much more manageable and it can be controlled in the background. Hashtags cannot. Totally open forum, but we'll talk about that a little bit too. A few other little features that it can do, announcements, seeing something that's pinned as an announcement, or not, I shouldn't say pinned, featured as an announcement. It gets a little tag on it. It becomes a little more official, brings a little more attention to that particular post. And actually, one of the benefits of using announcements is you can use different types of notifications. And you can see here, there's a little click there. I can notify members via email. There's a whole world of notifications that obviously users can control. They can opt out of some of those notifications if they feel like they're getting too many. If I use announcements, I can usurp that and make sure people don't miss the important things. Pinned conversations is the other kind of feature where I can bring that to the top of the community, make sure that that's the first thing that people read, or hey, that's the most important thing going on. I want to move that, and I can have some pinned at the right as well and include some important links. Access. That's again is something very important to Microsoft. They want to have wherever you're working, wherever you live, access to what's important to you. So that main menu that the devs that I work with lovingly call the waffle, that upper left SharePoint menu or wherever you might be. You see it here in Outlook, you see it in Teams everywhere. Pop that open, you'll see the apps that you have access to right now. And based on, where you're at and what you have, you'll have those suite of things there. And if you're an M365, you have Viva Engage. It's a part of it already. For different types of licensing, there might be some extra costs for bigger features within Viva, and that's something we're happy to talk to you about, get into some of those specifics to see what's available to you. But in this example, there it is in the main menu. Hey, if you're in Outlook and you're online, you're in the browser, you can see it pinned at the left. It can be brought into Teams and accessible. You could actually bring it into the channels that you're working on and make it a tab at the top. So again, if I'm collaborating with my team, and I'd say it's a closed loop of like 30 people, we're collaborating on our certain work, but there's a community that goes across, say, 4 or 5 different departments that has 200 people in it. I can still have that tab right there, so I can click over and in one click, read what's happening within the community. Hey, there was a new idea that was brought in. I could bring that into my closed loop within my team and say, hey, someone just posted this. Everyone should go check out that new video of that new product application, that new demo, whatever it is. And you can share information in a lot of different ways. It's at your fingertips. And you can see here in SharePoint, it can be embedded in SharePoint so everybody can get a preview or see things that are happening, bring those important messages up to the top, and then, of course, accessing it through your mobile app. Always very useful. So building communities, really wanted to kind of stress this and give you some examples of how to do it and why it's important and really making things meaningful and helpful. As we said before with Viva, with Yammer, things that get off the ground, and if you're not putting out really good, compelling content, and if people can't use it, it just becomes another distraction and it's another thing for them to tune out. So that's what we don't want, right? So how do we build these meaningful communities that are actually making people's lives better? Having a strategy and achievable goals, just like anything else in life, same concept, right? The adoption, how are we going to gain new members? How are we educating the community? Engagement, who is going to, what's going to keep people coming back? How can we help continue the conversation? Are there going to be events? What's our growth look like? Who is our audience? Let's define them. Let's define our goals. Let's get that organizational alignment as to why we're doing this so it can be promoted properly. And let's hit some milestones. How do we measure this? And then what type of content are you developing? Sometimes it's a little more curated. Sometimes you got to get that community going and you want to bring that content to the forefront. Is there a communication plan that's needed in there? We'll talk about use cases of where that matters. So before you start having that planning in there, I actually found this through some research, and it's this communitycanvas.org. I thought this is, I think, an older model that they were using, but I actually like the simplicity of it. So just questions to ask yourself when you're going to build this community. Why? First, what purpose does it serve? Asking yourself these things, finding ways to hit your goals, think about how things are going to be measured. What are we trying to do from a participation, from a how many posts? That's what keeps these communities from collecting dust and eventually just going away and making them really valuable tools. So we've got some great stuff in here. Happy to share this with you after this or direct you to some of this material. The roles, the rules, the governance. We preach governance all the time. Some people don't like the G word, but we know it's really important. And who gets to decide what, how are things being monitored, and of course the communication, how are these channels going to be used to communicate, how frequently are things happening, all kinds of stuff to kind of consider. If you are going to create a community around, say, compelling news or announcements or an important subject matter that you've got people that are in as true contributors, and they're the ones that are going to kind of keep it going, becomes a little more curated. You've got to have content, and it's just like anything else. Takes me way back to the early days of web design when everyone was like, yeah, we need a news feed. We have to have a news feed on your site. Well, who's going to manage that? Where's your calendar? What type of content are you putting out there in the world? Well, I haven't really thought about it yet. I just want a news feed. That's what happens is suddenly that thing goes dry. There's nothing compelling there. Nobody's reading it. if you need to jumpstart that, having that content in there, having that compelling content in there, as everybody in Marcom knows how important that is. When we get into the actual administration part, yeah, there's pieces there too to decide on. How many members, adding and removing members. An admin's going to have control about that. A little bit more on the IT side too. There's even deeper dives that you can do, but a regular admin can approve a member if it's a private group. In the background, IT, you can control who can post. We've got use cases of, hey, we want this community to be all about global leadership, let's say, and we've got 50 people that can post. Everybody can comment, but we only want certain people posting. You could do that. You can preload all of your members in there. It's this basic like auto opt-in. Everybody's in automatically. You can control if they can opt out or not. So there's a lot of setup you can do there. Getting into topics as well, same thing, creating new topics. That's something that an admin can do. You can remove a post. We get this question all the time. People are a little bit afraid about these open forums, right? And we get it. We get why that might be. If I'm going to create something in a forum and somebody's going to post something inappropriate, what do I do? Well, an admin can go in and delete it. You can't go in and change somebody's words. You can't edit somebody else's post, but you can say add or remove a topic from it. There are some little controls that you can do to update a post from somebody else. But basically, if there's something inappropriate or just even something that doesn't belong in that community, you can alert that person, hey, that should really be posted in this community. You can delete it for them, tell them that, give them the recommendations on how they could be communicating. There's ways to add that little official check mark. I could show you an example of that. That's a kind of an interesting thing. Again, more of a social media experience, but in the edits community content world here, you've got all that basic stuff, the name, the description you can add to it, additional info. I'll show you an example of that. We think it's really great to have guidelines, especially for, things that have a little bit deeper meaning. If you've got like a new product discussion group, if you have an innovation group, you might want to have some guidelines in there to say like, hey, this is how this community should be used. These are what we recommend you post about, and some of these other irrelevant things. We don't really want to junking up our community, so give people some guidelines and some guardrails to follow. You can add related communities. I'll show you that as well, and you can see some of the branding here. A work anniversary, very simple kind of community here. There's a branded header. There is a branded avatar there, and I actually kind of zoomed in here. You could see that, hey, only admins can start a conversation in this community. People can kind of see those ground rules right away as well. Get this question a lot too, Copilot, and this is a intentionally complex image to show you, yes, Copilot is happening within Viva Engage. For those that don't know, Copilot is the artificial intelligence engine of Microsoft. So you can see here, there's plans to have writing assistance for posts. There's some automation that can be brought in here, summarization services, a lot of different things that Copilot can do. There is a cost that comes along with Copilot. There is a premium cost as well. So this would probably be its own conversation, its own webinar as well, getting in to see what it can do. But Copilot is going to find its way into pretty much every single Microsoft product out there, just at different levels. It's all about ways to take advantage of things for you. All right, before we get in the demo, I want to hit some main use cases and get some wheels turning about how can this apply to me? What use cases do we really have, and what have we seen be successful? And we've talked about this a few times here, the idea of knowledge sharing, education, and training. We've seen a lot of success with champions and different ways that champion communities could be built, getting either technology-based type of champions or program initiative champions, and just giving people that forum to ask questions and learn and grow, and getting all those like-minded people together to share ideas. This could be a content, our subject matter experts from anything that's important within your organization, getting them together. Is it about creating better processes? Is it about policies and procedures and having things answered and getting a forum going around that? Technology help. We've seen a lot of success with that. Targeting just for specific platforms, SharePoint, Teams, even Viva Engage, the Meta the very meta concept of having a community around, like, how do I use Viva Engage? How should I be posting? What should I do? I didn't know this cool feature was there. How do I do a live event? Having people there that are moderating help-based and education-based communities, we've seen a lot of success with that. Concept of training and certifications. Imagine people getting together in a community to ask each other questions, to help each other. When did you get certified? Where is the best way to start? What work should I be doing? What does this accreditation really mean? You've got a lot of programs that you might be promoting as an organization, and there might be some outside of that, continuing education, all kinds of other things. You might have a lot of people doing that legwork, trying to help other individuals go the right direction. For all the people that have done it already, you've maybe got some champions or some really experienced individuals. Creating a community around that type of information and training really helps, and it can reduce a lot of that legwork. Company culture as well works across the board in a lot of these use cases as they come up here, but ways to promote your programs, live those programs. We have a client that they do a great job communicating major kind of culture building things that they do within the organization. It's all about mastery. So they have many tiers to things that you can master within, what you're doing as an individual, as an employee. A great concept there could be about getting those stories together, people sharing what they've done and what makes them feel good about accomplishing some of these things and things that they have mastered and new ways that they're looking at it. Starting huge conversations around that is just a great way to keep people invested and to feel like, hey, this isn't just something I read or a class I go to or an event I have to attend and then I come back home and I'm in my home office and there it is. This is a way they can be thinking about that and appreciating it and sharing those stories every day. Cross department, we talked about that and opportunities there, bringing together these like-minded groups. We've seen this be really successful at a lot of organizations for sure. And then this next level concept of bringing in people from the outside. It's possible to do within Viva Engage, just like it is within Teams. Maybe you want to start a community around volunteering and different things that a client is doing and you want them to participate, you can have a community that does that. And you can make decisions around what those people can see. Obviously, this would be the only community that they're in if they're in from the outside, etc. So there's a lot that can be done there. The real-time discussion at an event, this is where that mobile app comes into play. We've seen a lot of great success with this. So not only just like events, these could be sponsored and non-sponsored events. The use cases are plentiful here as well. At your corporate event, people are in Viva Engage, posting their fun photos, showing you where they are. We do a Vegas retreat every year. So there are always lots of posts and lots of fun stuff, where people are going, what they're doing, things that are happening at that event. This is a great way to bring that community together so they can interact as they're, hey, we're going to meet up over here at this time. Hey, we're going to go see this show, whatever it is. You can see a lot of that. But then at trade shows, conferences, same kind of thing. And especially for marketing to get material, people are taking videos and photos and capturing all these moments. In the past, where do you put all that? Even uploading them into Teams can be a little cumbersome. It's happening here, like in a social media feed. Now marketing can get in there and grab all those photos and grab all those videos and start to sort through what they can use to promote, say, the next event or things like that. Some really good use cases we've seen is like on-site at clients when sales or even techs are going out to a client and they're participating in something, they can now share information within a community about what's happening at that client, what they've seen that could be used at other clients. We especially see in manufacturing some great use cases. Same kind of thing. It was techs going out there taking photos of their products and their applications at the client. In that photo, they're getting pictures of competitors' equipment as well. So they're able to see what's happening in there, how they're using the competitor stuff, why they're using the competitors over theirs in certain situations, whatever it might be. In a lot of ways, we have product, say it's even R&D and things like that, communicating with sales and others. Here's what we're actually seeing out in the field and how things are being used. we've seen some really cool communities get started up around information like that. Tons of possibilities. Two-way conversation with leadership, we already hit upon that. Only a couple more slides before we get into the demo here. Ask your executive team anything, your CEO, posting those questions, having them answered by leadership, new interactive ways versus like, hey, the CEO does an announcement video once a month and shares that out. No two-way conversation, right? There are ways you can leverage Viva Engage, not only for live events and those possibilities too, but just to get those conversations happening. And it doesn't have to be just the CEO, it could be leadership, could be others. And that's where we showed like, hey, you can have certain people posting, anybody can comment, but only certain people can post. There are ways that leadership can share thoughts and ideas out there. There's the furthering of the concept of following somebody. We'll talk about that a little bit when we see the demo. If your leaders are out there just posting, think of it much like LinkedIn. They could just be sharing their thoughts and sharing information on the company, new information, and anybody could see it within the company. They're following them, they're liking it, they're commenting. Same experience as anything within social. And can be really powerful. Is it going to go there? Is Microsoft really going to achieve that, social media world within the organization? Maybe, maybe not. But it's certainly something that if you are looking for new ways to communicate to your employees, could be a viable option for you. I think this is the last one here. The social communities, employee milestones, of course, these things, some of the softer kind of things, the softer interactions you're trying to do. Is it social outreach though? Diversity and inclusion, I wouldn't say that's probably one of those softer things, but that's a very important thing for a lot of organizations. There are communities that can just be brought together around those subjects. But now we always see a lot of companies using news as a vehicle to celebrate birthdays and anniversaries, and sometimes those get cluttered up with major company announcements. How can we separate some of those things? They're not really news and articles. It's the fun things that we want people to engage with. Viva Engage is a quick way to kind of get those out there. Employee recognition as well. Those awards, those shout outs, using the recognition tool, having a community for new employees to get to know each other, to get to know the business, ask each other questions. We've seen this one actually be successful. Book clubs. Improving is all about the book clubs. We do a lot of those and have a lot of recommended posts. And so imagine you just had a book club that anybody could join and you could see what book they're reading that month, what they're going through, the questions that are being asked, and they can kind of hop in anytime and even just get recommendations for new things that they want to read or explore. That could be different subject matters around that. These are the fun engagement kind of things. This is one funny one I know from a few years ago, that the most popular community at this particular client was their marketplace. People going in there and reselling tickets to the sports game or a concert or just selling stuff in their house. It became like the eBay flea market of the company, and everyone thought it was kind of a joke, but boy, did it get a ton of engagement and people loved it. And so when we upgraded them and did a lot of work for them, like, yeah, we can't lose the marketplace. People love it too much. So there's all kinds of different fun things you can do and consider here as we look at all these use cases. Again, this was a lot of get the wheels turning type of information I wanted to kind of give out. So before we jump in and just do a quick test drive, I know we're coming up on time here soon. I'll just show you a few things in action, but I did show you a lot of screenshots of some of the things that are happening in Viva Engage. Thought we'd give a moment here if there were any kind of burning questions before we saw the demo. We can hit.
Hey, Mike, I don't want to take too much time because I want you to get into the demo, but one question I
Yeah.
did want to answer, because I know this is on a lot of people's mind as they go through, and that was, is the entire Viva app suite included in the M365 license? So,
Not everything. Not
yeah.
everything.
And
There are a
so,
lot. There is a lot, but there are new additional things that will start to hit at a premium. And some are pretty low cost, but stuff adds up, right? And so that is the future of what they're trying to offer in terms of tiers to some of that pricing.
and one thing I did want to mention is that improving can act as a CSP, and we include services and support around that, which
Mhm.
a lot of our clients find valuable rather than just purchasing off the portal or going through. You get kind of the same prices and some extra bundled services that go around that when you use us. And just real quick, if you look at Viva, Engage, Insights, Learning, the basic part of learning,
Mhm.
are part of most of the licenses. And then, as Michael had said, there's a number of specialty components that take other licenses. And so we can drill into that with you specifically because some of it depends on your license type, but did want to make sure we covered that.
Mhm. Any big burning questions? Or I could just go through, do a quick 5 minutes here, and then we can save some time at the end for questions if they come through. Should I keep rolling, Russ?
Yeah, that's all we'll cover for now. We'll
Great.
make sure we follow up on all the questions,
All
if
right,
not
good. We
during
got
this
some.
or individually, but let's
Yeah,
focus on the demo.
great. So here we see just I've got a kind of a blank canvas here in some ways of what a home page might look like. Again, coming from your desktop here, and seeing like where things are happening. Because there's been no new posts or anything new here, I'm just seeing that I'm all caught up. But at the left, I see that I've landed on my home, but I see that there's community tabs. There's something called Storyline, and then I can see different favorites and different communities that I'm actually in. And these are just some demo communities. So making a post just like you think it is, it's super easy. You're able to type in here. I'm able to choose what kind of post it is. It defaults as a discussion here. I see that the question here. You can see the style change, praise, the same thing. Who do I want to tag first? And then the poll itself, how many different answers I can add them, name the poll, put that out there. But you see right away what it's saying is this is going to be added to my storyline. So that is that concept that I said that Microsoft is trying to push, that once I post something, I am now adding things to my storyline. Individuals can come and follow me and see what I'm posting. And there is this type of organic social experience that if your leadership and say your CEO wants to start using this tool to say, hey, here's the important things that are happening. Everybody at the company can now see these posts. You can follow who you want to follow, and you can engage with people on a different social kind of way. Is this going to take off and become the be all end all? Not sure. I really see a lot more happening in communities, at least with my clients and where I see that going and building. But this is a new way to communicate, and it is a new tool out there. And I think it is something that can work certainly in certain use cases, but it's all about making sure that you're putting information out there that people find valuable, that they find interesting, and that they really want to follow you about. But as any user can do, they can get in there and start test driving this and putting those things out there. I'll show you here a community that's been created. Here is just a test name, the Social Buzz for Improving. You can see that it's got the little official check mark on there. And when I default here, here's all the conversations that I can see. And I have that choice of how to see them. The new ones first. I can sort by the questions, the unresolved questions that nobody has answered yet. There's a lot more filtration. And again, this is that big dividing line between teams. Teams is about posting to your channel, tagging people and saying, hey, this thing is finished, or please read this, or hey, let's start collaborating on this file. And you're notifying people and you're having a conversation about a particular thing. This is a very different types of a world that's way more open. You'll see at the top really quickly, I've got an about. I can get information about how many people are in here, who's active, who's posting, and this is that little info blurb where I can put more information, more guidelines about this community, what people should be doing. When people upload a file, it does come in here. This is a quick way to look at what's in here. And then there are the events. And then this is where we can start to talk about live events, and maybe this is something we could follow up with you on if you're interested. I can see over here at the right that this is a restricted community, that only certain people can post in it, only admins. Again, this is just an example demo. I can favorite it, I can share it and link to it. And then I can see here, because I am an admin, I get to control some of the settings within this community. Something important I wanted to point out that a client recently asked me about was this area of community resources here at the right. You can see just a quick span at the right column here. can see all those members at a glance. I can click on them and get more information on those people. I can see my quick info if anything's been pinned. And then I have community resources here. This is a bigger concept than Microsoft's been trying to put out, because in the past, I only had this little tab for files, and it was really hard to find things and see what was going on there. There's a backbone to these communities now, and you could see here a SharePoint library, a SharePoint site, OneNote, and Planner. So if I click on these, you'll actually see now that this community is getting a default SharePoint site around it. And there is actually a library in here and where documents are stored. And now people could actually get in here to find documents and use things that are based from the company, or I'm sorry, from the community. So this is a bigger concept. I know for some that aren't as familiar with this being tied together, if you're not using SharePoint and Teams and things like that regularly, this could be a lot to kind of look at, but there's actually some big benefits to it. And it really is about organizing the things that are shared. So if people are bringing in a lot of photos, images, videos, and things like that from the outside, this is where they're going to be stored. So whoever needs to access them can easily go in here and sort through those files and start creating folders and organize. For those that are only here for the engagement part and to have conversation and ask questions, that's what they're going to be using it for, and they won't be going into this world. So just something to kind of consider that I wanted to show that was a little bit relatively new. I know we're running short on time, so I'll just show some of the basics here. Of course, the emojis and the liking and sharing and all those kinds of things. I'll show you the search up here really quick. You can see here it says search Viva Engage. I'm searching just the Social Buzz, but I could search all of Viva Engage. I can go in here and say something like product, and it's going to show me at least some communities that I visited recently that are around products. But this is where I could see, hey, there were no conversations in the Social Buzz around them, but I could see, hey, there is a community, and that, look at that, there's a topic. And this topic now can show me everything that's been tagged as a product idea, and I can see where that tag is, and I can go through and engage that way as well. So it's just a different way to find information, a more powerful way to sort, if you will, and a more powerful way to associate information, which I think is really important. I can hit this communities tab and see a preview of all the communities that are available. I'll get some recommended to me. Again, the artificial intelligence is working behind the scenes, trying to see who I work with, the types of information I engage with, and recommend things to me. So you can see that there are different types of communities there. Again, it's about bringing those things all together and having that information happen. You can see an example of a poll here, being able to answer that. Something I wanted to show here with questions. You could see this is a very question-based, type of community. There are different ways to just set up those communities to say, hey, this is ask an expert anything. The community is going to be defaulted to a question and being able to do that automatically. So there are ways to kind of encourage the type of information that you want. And really quickly, I can just go back maybe to my storyline here. I can click on something and decide that, yep, I want to make it a question. And you can kind of see what that looks like and how I might put in the question I want to ask. I can include more details, give you some more information around that. So I know I ran a little long. We came right up on time. Too much rambling on my part. So we didn't get too deep into the demo, but certainly what we could do is set up any of these for you individually, and happy to do a second part to this. And like we said, maybe it's more about some of those other Viva tools that all get brought together. There's more deep dives we can do. So a follow-up there would be good.
And we have a couple of questions that we didn't get to that we will reply to the group with just kind of answers and a couple of links that I think might be helpful for the pricing questions. And we'll show a screenshot. There was a question about that, and we'll answer a couple of the remaining questions. And so You will be getting a large group just kind of response with some of the general information. But as Mike said, if you have individual questions or would like to spend some more time and dig a little bit deeper, we will be happy to set up time with you and give you a more personalized and catered to view and demo of this. But we really appreciate your time, Mike. Great job. I think you did a really excellent job of organizing this kind of broad topic, and we will look forward to speaking with you all soon.
Yep. Thank you so much, everyone.